The unemployment rate for Black South Africans is significantly higher than for white South Africans. A nation divided, South Africa's past. South Africa, a beautiful country with a complex history. For many years it was a land divided by race. Black South Africans were treated as second-class citizens. White South Africans held the power and privilege. Apartheid lasted for decades. Imagine growing up where opportunities were determined by skin color. This was the reality for millions under apartheid. The government made laws that separated people based on race. Black South Africans were denied basic human rights. This separation extended to all aspects of life. Apartheid created a deeply unequal society. The impact was devastating. It left deep scars on South African society. But amidst the darkness, there was always hope. Black South Africans fought tirelessly against apartheid. They protested, they organized, and they demanded change. Apartheid wasn't just about separating people, it was about creating an uneven playing field. Imagine a race where one runner is chained and the other isn't. That's what competition was like under apartheid. In every area of life, Black South Africans faced huge obstacles. Want to start a business? Good luck getting a loan from a bank that only lends to white people? Dream of becoming a doctor? Forget about it. The best schools and universities were for whites only. This system ensured that white South Africans held on to power and wealth. They controlled the economy, the government, and pretty much everything else. Black South Africans were relegated to low-paying jobs with little chance of advancement. The graph above shows a stark reality. Even if a black and white South African had the same job, the white person would get paid significantly more. This wasn't about skill or hard work. It was about a system designed to keep black people down. Let's talk numbers, folks. Because sometimes the best way to understand something as complex as apartheid is to look at the cold, hard facts. And trust me, the facts are shocking. Take education, for example. Under apartheid, black schools were severely underfunded and under-resourced. They often lacked basic necessities like textbooks, desks, and even qualified teachers. On the other hand, white schools enjoyed ample funding and state-of-the-art facilities. The result? A massive gap in educational attainment between black and white South Africans. In 1990, just before the end of apartheid, the literacy rate for black adults was around 53%, compared to over 90% for white adults. That's a difference of almost 40%. These numbers paint a clear picture. Apartheid created a system where black South Africans were deliberately disadvantaged from the very start. It's no surprise that this inequality spilled over into every other aspect of life, from employment to healthcare. Section 4. A legacy of inequality, education, jobs, and wealth. Even though apartheid officially ended in 1994, its legacy continues to cast a long shadow over South Africa. Remember that unequal playing field? It didn't magically disappear overnight. Black South Africans still face significant challenges in terms of education, employment, and wealth. Remember that gap in educational attainment? It still exists, although it has narrowed somewhat. Black students are more likely to attend under-resourced schools and are less likely to graduate from university. This educational disadvantage translates into fewer job opportunities and lower earning potential. The unemployment rate for black South Africans is significantly higher than for white South Africans. And even when they do find jobs, they are often stuck in low-paying, insecure positions. The wealth gap is perhaps the most glaring example of apartheid's enduring legacy. White South Africans continue to hold a disproportionate share of the country's wealth and land. This economic inequality fuels social tensions and hinders South Africa's progress towards a more just and equitable society. Section 5. Freedom's Promise, Steps Toward Equality. Now, despite all the challenges, it's important to remember that South Africa has made remarkable progress since the end of apartheid. The transition to a multiracial democracy was a monumental achievement, a testament to the resilience and determination of the South African people. Since 1994, the government has implemented various policies aimed at addressing the inequalities of the past. These include affirmative action programs to promote black participation in the economy, land reform initiatives to redistribute land to black farmers, and social grants to provide a safety net for the poorest South Africans. These efforts have had a positive impact. Millions of black South Africans have gained access to better education, healthcare, and economic opportunities. The black middle class has grown significantly, and black representation in government and other institutions has increased. However, the pace of change has been frustratingly slow for many. The legacy of apartheid runs deep, and dismantling it requires sustained effort and political will. South Africa today, a work in progress. South Africa today is a country in transition. It's a vibrant democracy with a free press and a constitution that guarantees equal rights for all. But it's also grappling with the ghosts of its past. The journey towards equality is far from over. It requires a collective effort to build a nation where everyone has an equal opportunity. The future depends on healing past wounds and creating an inclusive society. It's a challenge that requires courage, compassion, and commitment. If a kid from Soweto can host a late-night talk show in America, anything is possible. The story of South Africa is far from over. Apartheid, a stain on humanity. South Africa, a land of breathtaking beauty, diverse cultures, and a painful past. For nearly 50 years, the oppressive system of apartheid reigned supreme, brutally enforcing racial segregation and discrimination. From 1948 to 1994, the white minority government, fueled by a toxic ideology of racial superiority, subjected the black African majority to unimaginable suffering and injustice. Apartheid, an Afrikaans word meaning separateness, was more than just a policy. It was a way of life that permeated every aspect of society. It was a system designed to strip away the dignity, rights, and opportunities of millions of people based solely on the color of their skin. The legacy of apartheid continues to cast a long shadow over South Africa, shaping its social fabric and posing ongoing challenges. Understanding this dark chapter in human history is essential, not only to comprehend the complexities of modern South Africa, but also to learn from the past and prevent such atrocities from ever happening again. A system built on lies. At the heart of apartheid lay a deeply flawed and dangerous premise: the belief that white South Africans were inherently superior to black Africans. This racist ideology was used to justify a system that stripped black South Africans of their citizenship, land, and basic human rights. The government created a hierarchy of racial classification, categorizing people as white, black, colored, mixed race, or Indian. This classification determined every aspect of a person's life, dictating where they could live, work, and even whom they could love. The architects of apartheid went to great lengths to spread their propaganda, using education, media, and religion to indoctrinate the population with their twisted worldview. Black South Africans were portrayed as inferior, dangerous, and a threat to the white way of life. This systematic dehumanization served to legitimize the brutal policies of the apartheid regime and silence any opposition. It was a system built on lies, fear, and the relentless pursuit of power and control. Living under apartheid's shadow. Imagine a life where your every move is dictated by the color of your skin. This was the reality for millions of black South Africans under apartheid. They were confronted with the harsh realities of segregation and discrimination. Forced to live in overcrowded townships, separated from white areas, denied access to quality education, healthcare, and job opportunities. Their lives were controlled by oppressive laws and regulations. The immorality of pass laws. The pass laws were a cornerstone of apartheid's brutal regime, designed to control and restrict the movement of black South Africans. These laws were dehumanizing, treating individuals like pawns in a twisted game of social engineering. Imagine being told where you could live, work, and even visit based solely on the color of your skin. This was the reality for black South Africans under the pass law system. Section 5. Land dispossession, a cruel reality. At the heart of apartheid's brutality lay the forced removal of black South Africans from their ancestral lands. The 1913 Natives Land Act and subsequent legislation dispossessed black South Africans of their land rights, pushing them onto overcrowded and infertile reserves. Imagine being forcibly removed from your home, the land where your ancestors lived for generations, and relocated to a barren and unfamiliar territory. This was the cruel reality faced by millions of black South Africans under apartheid. The land dispossession policies were not only unjust, but also economically devastating. Black South Africans were denied access to fertile land, making it nearly impossible to sustain themselves through farming. This forced many into a life of cheap labor in white-owned mines, farms, and factories. The loss of land was a deeply traumatic experience for black South Africans, robbing them of their heritage, their livelihoods, and their sense of belonging. It was a wound that continues to fester in post-apartheid South Africa, fueling calls for land restitution and economic justice. Section 6. Education and opportunity denied. Education, the key to unlocking potential and empowering individuals, was deliberately manipulated under apartheid to entrench racial inequality. Black South Africans were denied access to quality education, trapping them in a cycle of poverty and limited opportunities. The Bantu Education Act of 1953 was a particularly insidious piece of legislation. It introduced a deliberately inferior curriculum for black students, designed to prepare them for a life of servitude and manual labor. Black schools were chronically underfunded, lacking basic resources like textbooks, desks, and qualified teachers. This deliberate sabotage of education served to maintain the racial hierarchy and ensure that black South Africans remained economically and socially disadvantaged. The denial of quality education had a devastating impact on generations of black South Africans. It limited their job prospects, stifled their potential, and perpetuated the cycle of poverty and inequality. Section 7. Voices of Defiance. The fight begins. Despite the brutal realities of apartheid, the spirit of resistance burned bright in the hearts of millions of South Africans. From the very beginning, brave individuals and organizations rose up to challenge the injustice and fight for equality. The African National Congress, formed in 1912, played a pivotal role in mobilizing opposition to apartheid. Through peaceful protests, boycotts, and civil disobedience, they sought to expose the brutality of the regime and demand equal rights for all South Africans. The Pan-Africanist Congress, formed in 1959, also emerged as a powerful force in the struggle against apartheid. They advocated for black self-reliance and a more militant approach to dismantling the racist regime. Despite facing constant harassment, imprisonment, and violence, these resistance movements refused to be silenced. Their unwavering commitment to justice and equality inspired millions and helped turn the tide against apartheid. Section 8. Mandela, a beacon of hope. No figure looms larger in the fight against apartheid than Nelson Mandela. Imprisoned for 27 years for his activism, Mandela became a global icon of resistance, his unwavering spirit a beacon of hope for millions. Mandela's leadership, both within the ANC and during his long imprisonment, was instrumental in uniting the opposition movement and galvanizing international support for the anti-apartheid struggle. His release from prison in 1990 marked a turning point in South African history. Mandela's commitment to reconciliation and forgiveness, rather than retribution, paved the way for a peaceful transition to democracy. His leadership during the delicate negotiations with the apartheid government helped prevent a bloodbath and laid the foundation for a new South Africa, based on equality, dignity, and respect for all. Section 9. The world takes a stand. The struggle against apartheid was not confined to the borders of South Africa. It became a global movement, uniting people from all walks of life in a shared commitment to justice and equality. International pressure played a crucial role in dismantling apartheid. Sanctions, boycotts, and divestment campaigns, spearheaded by activists, artists, and organizations worldwide, crippled the South African economy and forced the government to the negotiating table. Musicians, artists, and cultural icons used their platforms to raise awareness about the horrors of apartheid and mobilize support for the anti-apartheid movement. From the iconic Free Nelson Mandela concerts to the powerful imagery of artists like Miriam Makeba and Hugh Masekela, the world was awakened to the plight of black South Africans. The international community's unwavering condemnation of apartheid and its support for the liberation struggle were instrumental in bringing about the downfall of this oppressive regime. Section 10. Freedom's Dawn. The End of Apartheid. After decades of struggle and sacrifice, the year 1994 marked a watershed moment in South African history. The first multiracial democratic elections were held, signaling the end of apartheid and the dawn of a new era for the nation. The images of long lines of South Africans, black and white, waiting patiently to cast their votes for the first time, were beamed around the world, symbolizing the triumph of hope over hatred, of freedom over oppression. The election of Nelson Mandela as South Africa's first black president was met with jubilation and a sense of profound relief. It marked the beginning of a long and challenging journey towards healing, reconciliation, and the creation of a truly just and equitable society. The dismantling of apartheid was a testament to the courage, resilience, and unwavering commitment of millions of South Africans who dared to dream of a better future. It was a victory not only for South Africa, but for all who cherish freedom, equality, and human dignity. South Africa today, scars of the past, hopes for the future. 29 years after apartheid, South Africa stands as a vibrant democracy, but the scars of its past run deep. The legacy of apartheid shapes the nation's social, economic, and political landscape. While progress has been made, challenges remain. Racial and economic inequality persist. The journey towards a just and equitable South Africa is ongoing. Despite the challenges, there is hope. South Africa's young democracy shows resilience, and its people are committed to a better future. The spirit of Ubuntu guides the nation's journey towards healing and reconciliation.